Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond, Green Chambers in London, and today I'm looking at a book from Law Brief Publishing on the GDPR, that's the General Data Protection Regulation, a practical guide to the GDPR, written by Keith Markham. It's now in a second edition, it's been very popular. It's a very good book. I was most impressed with it. It tries to simplify what is quite a complex area. It's, in my view, unnecessarily complicated and been made even worse over the last few years because it's looking at how we hold, control data. It's data protection. It's how the state can get involved, and boy do they wish to, in a very substantial way sometimes. So it's a useful book, I think, for a lot of people who may not know too much about GDPR and may want to know more. And I found it quite simple to read, which I thought was very helpful, because this is a book for lay people as well as for professionals. So I've given it a title. You can get an indication of my view of this from the title: A Popular Analysis of this Irritating Area of Law on Data Protection, which offers increased confidence on compliance. Because we're into the old overbearing compliance regime as usual, the state telling us what to do about everything, and data is no exception. And I say that because obviously there have to be various rules in place, taken mainly from Europe, and there we are. So this is the book. There's the front page, there's the spine, and then on the back you can see a little bit of blurb, and then you can see some of the other publications from Law Brief Publishing. Now the back of the book has some previous guides written by, published by Law Brief Publishing. Then you've got some templates which are quite useful, I thought, concerning impact assessment. That's the Appendix 4 at the back. Excuse me. And then there are other appendices. There's a practical statement and an overview of the Act. There's no index, which is something I would like to have with these books. Going to the front of the book, there's the front page there. And then after that, you've got some blurb. And then there's a little dedication, which I'll let you just see there. It's very important. These dedications are important because a lot of people are involved when a book is written. And it's useful for the people to who've been involved to understand what's happening. He does say, and I will quote this: "To my wife and children, whose complete lack of interest in GDPR allowed me to keep some perspective while writing this book." Good on you, Keith. I understand that. Then there's a foreword, which is quite useful, just setting out why it's a timely book, and then the original preface there. And then you've got the contents section, setting out very clearly, I thought in very useful terms, an introduction, an overview of GDPR, then practical examples and appendices. And of course you've got a statement setting out exactly where we are with it all. And then the introduction itself. When it came in, 25th of May 2018, across the whole of the European Economic Area. There we go. The whole aim was to give it some, obviously some general applicability, and you can see running all the way through. And then the book has, there are occasional footnotes, not very many, but there's no great strength of footnoting. But it's a book which can be read quite easily. Some of it's quite detailed. There's general principles concerning various parts of the regulation itself. But generally speaking, Keith has produced, which is why it's a second edition in my view, a really first-class book for us. So what do I say? Apart from knocking the book down, I'm going to put it there just for the time being. Hopefully it will stay. The issue of data protection remains legally problematic to many people, both professional practitioners such as myself, and of course lay people who find this, apart from some of them who hate the European Union and blame it all on them. It's bigger than that, of course. The difficulty is trying to understand where we are with this regulation, because it does have a blanket coverage effectively for a very large number of people. It's not just in this part of the world either. I mean, apart from some countries, generally speaking, there has to be some sort of way in which we deal with the holding of data. And I understand that. The question is how complicated should it be? And of course the argument is sometimes it's too complicated. So what we've got here is a book from Keith Markham, new edition of his popular book, on the latest legal approach to data protection, known as the GDPR. It's about 400 pages long. It's a good, short paperback, and I thought very useful, not expensive either. And in the 2 years since the first edition appeared, the author's principal aim remains to provide a resource to lawyers and non-lawyers alike, so that they can navigate the often treacherous waters of data protection compliance with increased confidence. And I think he achieves his GDPR aim with considerable gusto, and in fact in good English too, because it really does help to have something that's simple, because this is not a simple subject. So do begin the book by reading part A, which offers an overview of the GDPR, setting out a summary of its main provisions. Each chapter, of course, focuses on a different issue as the key content, and is followed by a series of practical steps which we feel will be of benefit to a wide readership. And that's why I've indicated it's useful not just for professionals, perhaps as a sharpener, because we can go to the sources themselves, but also I think it's easy to read as a practical guide, so that will help everybody. Markham has summed up the current position on the regulation using these words, quote, "The GDPR still remains firmly in the public eye, with many recent developments in terms of compensation claims, enforcement action and Brexit considerations." And so you get the general view. I'm reviewing this in the summer of 2020 after the main problem we've had this year with COVID. And I do not know what's going to happen with the profession and with the law generally, because things are going to be different. Whether this affects GDPR, I don't know, but it's certainly because of employment problems, we are into a very different landscape for the next couple of years. So what we've got here with the second edition of this work is something which provides both succinct analysis of all the key issues and a series of practical examples to help lawyers and non-lawyers alike comply with their obligations in a common sense and risk-focused manner. And again, I think that's important, because I'd like to see a bit more common sense with the GDPR. I think people have been threatened a bit over it, unnecessarily so, because we've all got to work together. We make sure that we are, it says risk focused. In other words, we are focused about the risks of not controlling and handling the data in the correct way. And I understand that too, because you've got problems of people wanting to steal information and all sorts of other things that do come into it. And frankly, the sanctions and the remedies that are available are way beyond most people's means. Now, what Markham has also done is he's included a series of worked examples in part B of the book, which offer us a practical approach when dealing with this topic, which I think will be helpful for those who are new to it and will need assistance. It's been fully updated for the second edition for 2020, and it presents itself as a guide which is written, I think, in a very accessible style for all, with a number of new chapters devoted to topics such as data protection impact assessments, which are covered towards the back of the book as well, including also compensation and inevitably Brexit in chapter 15, although where we are with that now is up for discussion, because we know that we're leaving the European Union fully on the 31st of December 2020, deal or no deal. And obviously the full horror of the COVID pandemic is yet to unfold. So we do not know what we're going to be doing in the early 2020s. But we do have this book, which will help us on GDPR. So let me conclude by saying what we found of great assistance are the series of especially useful practical examples given. And of course, Markham's templates, which will help you and your organisation achieve compliance in what is, for many, as I said, a complex and an irritating area of regulation. But it's irritating in the sense that we know we've got to deal with it, and it's there, but it's a nuisance. The thing is that this book, I hope, will help get some perspective, because Part C contains the appendices covering the overview of GDPR itself, an overview of the 2018 Act, definitions and the useful template for the assessment form, and of course there's a resource section right at the end which will be of help, although I'm sorry that there isn't the index at the moment. So thank you, Keith, but do include your index next time, is what I've said. Now, the author states the law as at the 31st of January 2020, and the publication date of the book was the 6th of March 2020. One last look, it's a paperback, there we go. And there's the spine, and there's the blurb on the back. Just opening it in the middle. This is direct marketing, an area I have been involved in the past. This is really what we can and can't do. Lists are very important, of course, because mail shots, calls, all of this information. We are, as I said, probably going to enter a very new era in post-COVID terms. GDPR will be there to protect, and I think the important key is, whilst one may not like some of what is actually in the regulation as a whole, I would say that this book will help you. It's a guide, philosopher and friend, if you like, in some respects, taking something from Glanville Williams there, but it is actually very helpful. So thank you very much to Keith and to all the people at Law Brief Publishing for an excellent new book. Thanks to all. Bye-bye.